Hello everyone, my name is Christine. I'm your guide for difficult life transitions through transformation, healing, inner work, from a trauma-based survival mode to soul-aligned embodied living. And today I thought I'd talk about the very beginning. How do you even know you need trauma healing or healing at all? How do you know that you have even trauma? And how do you even start? So for me, until I was already beginning of my 30s, my life was very unconscious. I was very deeply unaware of literally anything. I lived from trauma response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, nervous system dysregulation, and the consequences, for example, addictions. And I didn't know, I had no idea. And I was, from a very young age, I started to drink, I started to smoke, I started to have relationships with boys and then men. Literally from one into the next, which much later, actually, until recently, I didn't know that was called a love addiction or love and sex addiction. In my case, it was not a sex addiction, it was just love addiction. And I will talk about that later or in a different video, what the root cause of that is. But yeah, and I felt really bad. I felt really heavy. I felt really, there was a low grade or medium grade heaviness and depression and unease the entire time, like a background humming noise that would never go away. And as soon as I was on my own, I would feel it. Stuff would like come up, would scratch at the door of my awareness because it was lurking right underneath the surface. A lot of trauma, a lot of darkness, a lot of heaviness. And I tried to escape. I tried to numb. I tried to distract. I tried to run away from it. And I did that in my case, and of course there are other ways how it shows or how it plays out. In my case, it was mostly relationships and connections with other people that I tried to distract myself with. Also because at home it was not a safe place to be, which is something that the child and then the teenager could not admit to herself. So because we need the home and the parents for survival, right? So if they are you need them for survival, right? But they are also the root cause for all that trauma and all that dysregulation. So it's all very subconscious. Like you're not aware of it consciously unless you are like really early awakening and really smart. But in most cases, we're just not aware of it. So we do everything we can to get away and to numb and to distract. So I had many relationships. I could not be on my own. I had friends and peers and groups, and I went out all the time partying. I just couldn't be on my own at all. And I was also highly sensitive and actually quite an introvert. And I didn't know that either. And so I needed the alcohol also to numb that out, to be even able to be extrovert, to socialize, to function within crowds, to bail out music and all of that. And it all added, of course, to the stress, to the nervous system, stress and dysregulation. And so the years passed and the decades passed, and then I just tried to be normal. I tried to live a normal life. I tried to fit in. I tried to do what everyone else does, although from a very young age I knew I'm somehow different. But I had no concept. I had no template. I had no blueprint for a different kind of living. because everyone lived like this. And there was a lot of pressure, and the culture I come from is a very conformist culture. You just be normal and do what everyone does, and go to school and go to university and have a job, have a career, have a house, have a car, get married, have children, retire, die. And that was just not something that I could ever imagine for me. But again, I had no idea what else to do, so I tried. The school, the university, with a lot of force, willpower, I somehow muddled through it, and I tried to start a career as first working in publishers' houses and then as an editorial journalist. And that turned out to be very difficult because, of course, you have these kind of energies in you, and you coming from a lot of trauma response, and then you will always attract the right environments and people to mirror that back to you. So, of course, what did I attract? I attracted toxic bosses and toxic work environments and karmic relationships and insecure attachment style relationships, and it's all connected anyway. And it all collapsed, and I didn't understand what's wrong with me. I just didn't understand why my life was so difficult, why nothing worked, why all that effort always led to collapse instead of building something. And of course, that was one layer. The other layer was my path, my soul wanted differently. And I was just not made for that kind of life. So it had to not work out. It had to collapse so that I would finally embark on my true path, which was then when I was 31, I left Germany behind. I left my relationship, my job, my career, everything. And that time I didn't know that I would leave it forever. It was just meant to be a break. But I started backpacking on my own. I was so scared, oh my God, and I had no idea of anything. I have so much compassion for myself, how naive I was back then, although I was already 31. But when you have lots of trauma, then there's a very unintegrated young part of you that stays that age. And I was basically a child in the body of a grown-up woman. And oh God, that's a whole nother story. But I knew I had to change something, but I didn't know what. So all I knew was like, okay, leave that behind, like break free physically, leaving that family system behind, the system of that society, of that work culture and the relationship and everything. This whole eat, pray, love thing, basically. But then lots of stuff happened in that first trip that was life-changing. And I had my first awakening there, I think. But not like a spiritual awakening or anything. I mean, I guess it was, but it was more like this taste of the first real taste of freedom. Of freedom I had in my life, of adventure, of, oh my God, there's a whole world out there. Like I exited the prison I've lived in my whole life, the external one, and then internally you're also imprisoned, of course. And for the first time in my life, I felt, oh my God, I could do stuff. Like there's a whole world out there, and I can do it. I can go traveling on my own. I can do all these cool things. I can go scuba diving. I can sleep in the jungle. I can meditate in monasteries. I can, like, back then all that stuff was crazy for me. Like, oh my God, I can get a tattoo. I tasted that freedom that was so sweet that it just changed everything. And although 3 months were planned, I had a return ticket, then I extended it to 6 months, and so much stuff happened, and I had life-changing encounters, of course with men also, that made me realize, no, there is a different way of living, and I'm not going back. I'm not going back into my old life, into that job, into that restricted, conformist prison that I've lived in my whole life. And I didn't know yet that I was yes, it was amazing, and it was the door to freedom and a door to change and transformation, but I didn't know yet how much burden I carried, and how much heaviness and how much trauma. And then I just moved to Thailand for a few years, and I realized my dream of becoming a scuba dive instructor and living in paradise and having that lifestyle, it was just so cool and so amazing and adventurous and free and wild and everything I ever wanted. And then after a while, guess what? I felt again kind of bad and empty inside. And what was more is that environment very much supported, how should I put that? Addiction-driven lifestyle. Like, there was a lot of drinking, a lot of alcohol, a lot of promiscuity, the partying, the smoking. There was, I guess, a drug culture, but that was not my thing, luckily. But I just got lost. I got lost in hedonism. I got lost in distraction and numbing again. I got lost in lots of affairs and relationships and love and sex addiction. Again, I didn't know. And so if that's, I'm talking a lot here about myself, but like, if that is you, if you recognize yourself in any of this, that there is something that you're trying to not feel, and that's why you numb out, and that's why you escape, and that's why you drink, and that's why you have love and sex addiction, that's why you have one relationship after the other that is not working out, maybe partners that really don't treat you well, maybe even very toxic and very karmic, and a lot of intensity. That's another sign. Like, a lot of you chasing intensity and you're living in extremes because the nervous system is not on a baseline of regulation, of peace, of calm, of homeostasis. No, it's the baseline is like a roller coaster of intensity, and you're chasing drama, you chase intensity, you chase the extremes, you chase the highs, and after the highs have to come the lows. So you constantly fall back into the hole, and then you chase the next high and the next, and then you fall back again, and it's just so exhausting. It's exhausting for the body, it's exhausting for the soul, it's just exhausting. But it's like you're not even aware of it maybe in the beginning, and you're addicted to it. You're addicted to that kind of life of intensity and chasing highs and drama and all of that. But maybe you also have addictions. Maybe you drink too much. Maybe you go from one relationship into the next, or affairs, or one night stand. Maybe you take drugs. Maybe you go consuming and shopping and gambling and online whatever portals. I don't know about that, or like, I don't know, like there's so many things, binge eating, or there's just so many things that we can get lost in if we just don't want to feel what we have to feel in order to start healing the root causes of all of that. And there are always root causes. It's not coming from nowhere. It's not. And the root causes are, in my experience, and I've been on that journey for a good while now, it's always trauma. And the most impactful one would be any kind of childhood trauma, which is most likely attachment trauma. If you have a history of difficult relationships or going from one relationship to the other, we always attract unavailable partners or avoidant ones, or even narcissistic ones or something. There is definitely something there that happened probably in your early childhood, maybe even pre-verbal. And I will talk about that in another video. That is some sort of attachment trauma. And that's why that inner child part in you, and you have no idea about it, it's all very unconsciously driven, is looking for mommy, daddy figure, is looking for that attachment. Because there was attachment rupture in the first years of your life. Or maybe there is also basically developmental trauma, complex trauma, or what we just call childhood trauma, like ongoing. When you have, for example, parents that are very traumatized themselves and dysregulated, and then they don't know it and they haven't done any inner healing work or anything, then of course they will pass it on to you. Maybe they have addictions. Maybe they are the narcissistic ones. Maybe they are emotionally immature. Maybe they drink. Maybe there is physical domestic violence or emotional abuse or even sexual abuse or anything like that, then for sure you will have complex and developmental trauma. And even as you grow and you grow into an adult and you find ways to somehow still live an okay enough life. Maybe it's not that dramatic. Maybe you don't have one crisis after the other. Maybe you don't have addictions. But it will, maybe there are a few areas or all areas of your life. Like in my case, I had all areas of life heavily, heavily negatively impacted. And I did not understand what the fuck is going on? Like, what am I doing wrong? So if that's you, you're not doing anything wrong, okay? You're just trying to survive somehow the best way that you know. And when we don't know about any of this, and we're not aware, and we just live from unconscious, unhealed, unawakened, like mindset and emotions, then these things will start to happen again and again and again, because it has to, because the world just mirrors that back to you, what's already inside of you. So, and I've tried for, 14 years to change my external circumstances, to finally feel better, to finally be happy, to finally be at peace, to whatever. So I changed constantly the place I live, the country. I don't know. I moved 1 million times in my life. I don't even know how many. I never lived longer in the same place than a year and a few months. Never. Changing relationships, changing jobs, changing houses, changing your appearance, changing everything. And it's just, nothing really works. And the same patterns keep happening. The same kind of negative relationships keep happening. Everything just keeps on happening. And that's why, because the external follows the internal, like as within, so without. It's not the other way around. It can help, for me, definitely help to change my, to just go, to just travel, to just live far away. And that can be very helpful if you live in a toxic environment, if you live in a dysfunctional family system or partnership or whatever, or job, or so that can help, but it's not, then you're not done. That's just the beginning. So you have to start looking within, and that's the only way that it will permanently change something for the better. And the way that you do that, and there are 1 million, hopefully more videos to come, how I talk about that in more detail. But you have to start looking at the trauma root causes. You have to start looking and being very honest with yourself. We tend to not be honest with ourselves and like, no, it's okay, it's not that bad. Like, it was okay, my parents were okay, my childhood was okay. And by the way, this is not about blaming parents. This is not about putting blame on anyone. But it's about honesty, integrity, truth. And you have to start to be truthful with yourself about your life. If that's where you are right now, and I guess you are, otherwise you wouldn't be watching that video. And you just start looking within, and you start to be very radically honest with yourself. You start to maybe even make a life inventory. You write down the patterns since early, whatever, childhood, in relationship areas, in with platonic and romantic, with your family, with your money situation, work situation, career, health, anything, and write down what's the recurring pattern and where am I numbing, where am I distracting myself, where do I have maybe even addiction or self-destructive behavior, because all of that would point to a trauma situation as root cause. And how do you start? I would recommend to start with inner child healing, hands down. That's how I started intuitively. I didn't have a therapist, I didn't have a mentor, I didn't have money to afford that. I didn't even know anything. It just came to me intuitively when I started my spiritual journey. Start there. Inner child healing and reparenting work. And please don't make the same mistake that I did, that I just did that for so many years, coming from that spiritual part, from all the soul stuff, and then yes, the inner child and the reparenting, but it was not embodied. That was my biggest mistake. So try to avoid somehow doing the work, but somehow you're still spiritual bypassing. The most important thing is include the body, especially when there was a really early trauma, early attachment trauma that is pre-verbal, that lives directly in the body, that is on the somatic level. So if you can start with inner child healing, reparenting, and somatic work, for example, somatic experiencing or any kind of somatic techniques, if you can start really early with that and you combine that, then you're already really off to a really good start. And I will go much deeper in future videos. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say for today. I hope you got something out of it, and I wish you a beautiful day. Until next time. Bye-bye.